Opening statement. In this video, I read the Road to Life plan so that it can be listened to. While I am reading it, the video shows the pages so that references can be seen and the text can be read by the viewer as well. At the end of the video, I have a section that tells how to implement the plan. Additionally, this series of videos should be listened to in order. Although this video is not X-rated, I advise that you do not invite your children. June 12th, 2018, 20th draft. The Road to Life Plan, How to Save the World. A white paper by Adam Soul. Introduction. On April 26, 2018, I went to a meeting that hosted Professor Emeritus, PhD, Guy McPherson, who is a conservation biologist and probably the world's leading authority on abrupt climate change. His message is that the Arctic Ocean will most likely be ice-free by the end of this summer, 2018. And when that happens, a series of irreversible reactions will cause the end of life on Earth. In this meeting, I asked Professor McPherson if he could make a list of things that mankind would have to do, no matter how difficult or apparently impossible they might be, in order to save the world. His reply was that it was too late, and there is nothing we can do to stop this now. Professor McPherson is a doctor, and he is giving us a terminal diagnosis. What are we going to do? We need a plan. Without a plan, we are lost. One can search all over the internet and find all kinds of information about the problems that face mankind today. But you won't find any sources that present a plan for how to get out of this mess we've created. The reason there are no plans for life is because the problems are so great that no one feels they can get their arms around them, and therefore they do not see a way out. Most people seem to agree with this acquiescent attitude. And so we lie in wait of death while thinking the dream of survival is a fool's aberration, and we do nothing. We have no vision, and we have no plan. I am Adam Soul. I know an ancient wisdom for mankind to listen to and understand. This wisdom is not hocus pocus. It is a real plan. It shows mankind how to get our collective arms around the problems and come together to find the way back to life. There are many paths for mankind to follow on the road to life, and no one has a right to tell another which path they must follow. But in the case of life or death, everyone has a right to ask. And so as one human being to another, for the sake of my children and your children, and the rest of life on earth, I humbly ask that you consider this path of ancient wisdom that I have called the road to life. Adam Soul. The road to life relies heavily on advanced computer technology. Collective intelligence is a new branch of the internet that is underway. Combined with artificial intelligence and modeling, this new system of database management can help mankind find the answers we need. Collective intelligence will be referred to often throughout the text. This white paper titled Road to Life is a living document that will need continual updating. I am asking for help with it. I have posted a reading of this white paper on YouTube so that it can be listened to. Insights, suggestions, and references are sincerely appreciated. Anyone who wants to copy portions of this paper for presentations, please feel free to do so. However, I do not guarantee that it is 100% correct. I have not yet included all the necessary references because I haven't had time to get to all of them. And though I pull from years of study, I am not a professional writer, and therefore I did not keep much of a bibliography. So there are some things that still need to be checked, and after they are, a few of the details may need to be changed, but the essence of truth should remain. The reason I am presenting this Road to Life plan that recognizes money as a literal poison to mankind and requires the elimination of all forms of money is because no one else is, and because I think that in this day of abrupt climate change, the only way mankind will ever overcome is through our complete end of all money. The bad news is that to get out of this mess, it will cost us all of our money. The good news is that life without money will be much better. Please note, the Road to Life plan can be argued against with countless reasons why it will not work. Attacking a single portion of the plan will likewise produce meaningless arguments, because each portion, or step as I have called them, will not stand alone, and must be considered with respect to the entire plan. Those of us who see the vision ask that the reader temporarily set aside all negative thoughts and imagine with the plan to end all money instead of against it. As will become apparent in this white paper, money is a poison that has altered mankind's normal brain thought processes. Part of this alteration includes the inability to recognize money as a poison. This is why we must let go of the negative feelings and let our imaginations lead the way. The road to life will be found by imagining the earth without money. Table of Contents. Introduction. The Analogies. Part 1. Where did mankind go wrong? Part 2. Problems and Perspectives. Part 3. The Solution. The Road to Life Plan. Part 4. How do we make the Road to Life plan happen? The Analogies. Analogy number 1. The cancer patient. A man is diagnosed with an incurable cancer that will soon kill him. The doctor tells the man he has no hope, that the disease has spread too far, and the best he can do is prepare to die. The man goes home and prepares to die. Then the man is told of a wise medicine woman who is said to cure cancers with herbs and special treatments and a macrobiotic diet. The man has nothing to lose, so he goes to see this medicine woman. The medicine woman invites the man in and serves him tea and sits down and talks with the man for a long time, asking many questions. When she is done, she tells the man to wait, and she leaves and then returns in a short while with a printout of papers in her hand. She hands the papers to the man and says, "This is your road to life plan. If you follow it, then it is physically possible for you to be healed. The better you follow it, the better chance you will have of healing. If you follow it well and Mother Earth smiles on you, you will be healed." The man left the medicine woman and followed his road to life plan, which changed his lifestyle of living completely, and he was healed. Analogy number 2. The Starship Enterprise. Note: no animal in nature will purposely foul its own nest unless it is either sick or under the influence of a poison. The Starship Enterprise is a fiction spaceship that carries its passengers and crew safely through space, like the Earth does for mankind. The captain and officers oversee the crew and the passengers and maintain the many systems of the vessel. Time goes on and things seem to be going well until one day everyone on board begins to act a little weird. They start hinting around at having items from the ship to sell. Other people are quick to join in on the financially rewarding endeavor. Eventually, they dismantle and sell much of the air filter system. They rob the docking mechanism and the potable water system for parts to sell. Everyone, it seems, has gone crazy, even the captain. The Enterprise is rendered helpless, but no one seems to know what to do about it. Before long, the entire operation of the ship is turned around so that more of the ship can be sold. Just before all is lost, a lab technician decides to check and discovers that a poison had accidentally contaminated part of the food supply. When the technician reports this to the captain orders the immediate removal of the poison and decontamination of the food supply. Soon the effects of the poison wear off, and the people's eyes are opened, and they see what they have done, and immediately get onto the process of making the repairs. Analogy number 3: a man with rabies. A normal, sane man gets bitten by a rabid dog and doesn't realize that the dog was rabid. The man treats his wound and doesn't think about it very much after that. Then the man's mind begins to swirl, and soon the man is not himself anymore and is not sane. While he is insane, he burns down his neighbor's house and kills their dog. People who see him say that something is wrong with him, but they don't know what it is. Some superstitious people declare that he has been taken over by an evil spirit. They call an exorcist to rid the man of the evil spirit. But before the exorcist arrives, a medical doctor examines the man, discovers the dog bite, and treats the man for rabies. Eventually, the man recovers and his sanity returns, and the superstitious people say, "Oh, it wasn't an evil spirit after all. It was just a poison." Part 1: Where did mankind go wrong? My journey of knowledge collection about ancient man began about 30 years ago when I read the Clan of the Cave Bear series of novels by Jean Auel. Though her novels were fiction, she did a lot of study on ancient man, and I was inspired by her work. I have also read about hunter and gatherer tribes that still existed in the 1950s in Africa, and also later discovered in the Amazon. Additionally, I have watched documentaries, listened to books on CDs, read reports, scanned the internet, listened to CD books by Joseph Campbell, studied sciences and engineering in college, and grew up singing from Baptist hymnals and seeing 12-foot long sturgeon laid out on the banks of the Columbia River. I am 64 years old, and I remember when winters were a lot colder and the population of mankind on Earth was a third of what it is now. These are my credentials. The following paragraphs are my own interpretation of how I see that mankind went wrong. Maybe you will agree. The first wrong: we went against wisdom. Anthropological studies show that in the beginning mankind lived as hunters and gatherers for thousands of years prior to mankind becoming civilized. Essentially, we lived in the proverbial Garden of Eden all over the world, straight from the hand of God, or Mother Nature, or however you choose to say it. We lived off the bounty of the earth. We were naked and didn't know it. We did not eat from the tree of knowledge, and we did not bring the world to destruction. Before civilization, the populations of mankind remained relatively the same. Growth was slow, change was slow. One generation was handed down to the next generation, and the next the same as before. Each generation faced the same horizons as their parents and grandparents had faced, and when there were natural variations due to climate changes, volcanic activity, earthquakes, and so forth, they recited passed down stories from previous generations that told them what to do. These duplications of generations over thousands of years perfected their ways of life, and I think they loved their lives. Our hunter and gatherer ancestors lived in nature and compared themselves to nature. Men and women knew who they were and where they fit into life. Everything was natural and pure. Everything they did was tried and tried again. They knew what normal was. One of the truths that our hunter and gatherer ancestors knew was that in nature no animal will purposely foul its own nest. This is a basic tenet of survival. They knew that the only way an animal will foul its own nest is if the animal is sick. The ancient hunters and gatherers lived on Earth for tens of thousands of years in basic harmony with nature, leaving life in the proverbial Garden of Eden for their progeny. Civilized man, however, in a comparatively short amount of time, has destroyed nature, fouled his own nest, and for all of his intelligence, leaves death to all life on Earth. civilized man's behavior is not normal. Our hunter and gatherer ancestors would say that a sickness has come over civilized man. Anthropological studies reveal a common wisdom among American tribes of pre civilization, and probably tribes around the world, though the principle may be stated differently. This common wisdom was to make all tribal decisions based on 7 generations into the future. Adhering to this wisdom ensured life for the future. In the summers, the clans and tribes from around the regions would gather in camps beside rivers and fertile valleys where lots of food could be hunted and gathered. Here in the United States Pacific Northwest, the Indians called these gatherings potlatches. At potlatches, they would exchange items, commingle, and breed with other clans so as to mix up their gene pools. During these summer camps, the wise leaders would get together and sit on top of a hill overlooking the encamped valley and basically have their tribal guidance meetings. Sometimes the suggestion would be raised that the clan should try a little planting and herding instead of only hunting and gathering. But each time the suggestion is rejected because of the 7 generation rule, because the wise leaders looked into the future and saw the potential for problems, such as too many mouths to feed and not enough food. Time continues, and one day a mini ice age sets in, or a long drought, or something else develops where the people are suffering from a scarcity of food. The leaders gather at the top of the hill, and the suggestion is raised again to plant and herd. The leaders finally give in and agree to ignore the 7 generation wisdom because of the suffering and loss of life due to the mini ice age. They agree to allow planting and herding. The tribes then begin to plant crops and herd animals. They cultivate fields of edible plants. They plant orchards, and they make pen stocks for fish and corrals for livestock, and maybe even divert water for irrigation. They create enhanced environments. Their technology increased. They no longer depended solely on nature or the hand of God, however you want to call it. They had eaten from the tree of knowledge and had taken the sustainment of their lives into their own hands. A generation passes, and the mini ice age rescinds, and the tribes assemble again in the valleys for their summer camps. The wise leaders gather for their meeting, but when they arrive at the top of the hill, they look over the valley and see that the valley is now overflowing with people. Now we must plant and herd, they proclaim. There are so many people now that there is not enough natural food to sustain everyone as hunters and gatherers. If we stop planting and herding now, many people will die. Now we must live by the sweat of our brow. This is the moment in history that I think mankind left the proverbial Garden of Eden. Planting and herding caused his populations to grow, and then civilization was born. Leaving the proverbial Garden of Eden was a consequence of breaking the natural wisdom law of 7 generations. It was a consequence of eating the forbidden fruit of the tree of knowledge. Breaking this natural wisdom or disobeying God by eating from the tree of knowledge, however you want to say it. When we went against the wisdom, this is the first way, I think, that mankind went wrong. Before then, we didn't even realize we were naked. The second wrong, we hardened our hearts. Something else happened to mankind when we decided to start planting and herding. As hunters and gatherers, we respected all life and hunted animals with that respect. We would kill the mastodon and bury its heart alongside the carcass as a gift of respect. Mother Earth allowed us to live here, and we approached that honor with humility. But when mankind began to herd animals, our relationship towards all life changed. We lost our respect. We hardened our hearts. And now we have become the enemies of all life on earth. This is why Mother Earth is coming against us. Herding animals caused us to harden our hearts. We would raise the animals from birth. We would shoo them around, shepherd them, pen them up, give them water, and sing to them at night. Human populations were small at this time. It might be days before you would see another human. These animals were our friends. We raise them specifically to kill them and eat them, so that is what we do. Our guilt is unimaginable. Everything has changed. There is no hunt anymore. There is no gift of respect. We do not ask the animals for permission to kill them and eat them anymore. We either toil by the sweat of our brows in the fields planting, or we shepherd animals, which also means killing them and eating them and dealing with a lot of guilt. The ancient man thinks, well, I can only take so much guilt, and so, since I am not the one who made the decision to leave the Garden of Eden, thereby forcing this new disgusting life upon me, then I am left with no choice now but to ignore the feelings of my animals and harden my heart against them, and pass the hardening of my heart unto my children so that they can also eat without guilt. So I harden my heart to the animals, and I kill them, and I pass my hardened heart down to my children by telling them that our hurting and slaughtering of animals is natural and necessary to survive, and that it is good. Then I go back to killing my animal friends, and pretty soon it doesn't bother me anymore. When mankind ate from the tree of knowledge, or when we began planting and herding, we left the stable world of the past and walked into a new world of unknown horizons. It must have been bewildering. Stumbling around in our delusions, the first thing we run into is guilt. A guilt so enormous that we have to shun it aside and change our way of thinking completely in order to cope. We had to harden our hearts. The effect on us was like eating a poison. A blindness came over mankind. We lost our humility and respect for life. Herding animals was the second time mankind went wrong. One of the last greatest anthropologists, Joseph Campbell, said, quote, there were two different developments out of the early agricultural and domestication of animal base. In the riverlands and in the high mountain valleys where it was possible to raise crops, the accent would be on agriculture. In the broad grazing lands, the accent was on animal domestication. And so you have herding people. And there is a distinct separation as early as, let's say, the 8th and 7th millenniums, 8,000 and 7,000 BC, between the simple agriculturalist and the still nomadic herding people. Where you have herders, the male is the important person. He's the one that is rounding up the animals, that is killing the animals, and protecting this herd against another herd. So you have a warrior accent. Whereas when the toiling is that of agriculture, the relationship is to the earth, which is the mother. She brings forth life and she nourishes life, and so the female principle is the dominant one there. Quote, in the same video, Campbell goes on to talk about how the herding people became very much warriors and how cities would build walls to protect themselves from them. The third wrong, we began to use money. As we all know, one thing leads to another, and so the shepherd man hardened his heart to his animals. But he'd still rather not slaughter his animals in front of his children. So he makes a deal and agrees to trade animals with a friend down the way. They agree to the trade, acknowledging that they would take the other's animals home and slaughter them instead of their own animals, thereby not inducing the negative reactions from their families for killing one of their own animal friends. This switch shielded their families and helped them to not feel the guilt. It allowed mankind to separate nature from our human spirituality so that we wouldn't feel the animals' pain anymore, or sense their fear, or hear their cries for help. We hardened our hearts even further and turned animals into commodities, items for sale and trade. Animals became the first form of money. People would have individual herds, and soon it became so that a person with a greater number of livestock would be considered as the person with more value or wealth. Life became about acquiring more animals. It was no longer about Lucy the cow who gave milk and was part of the family. It was now about Lucy the cow's livestock number and how much she weighed and how much she would sell for. Until finally one day life turned into the bull market and the bear market, the stock market, stocks and bonds, and stockholders. When money came into being, it also meant that other things could then be traded for money, not just animals. Even humans could be traded for money. Precious metals could be traded for money. The earth could be sold and consumed for money. And so it has been. When animals became the first form of money, money was born. When money was born, mankind had to harden his heart even more in order to cope with the guilt. Our hearts turned cold and our spirits were severed as we lost our humility and our respect for all life and even for Mother Earth herself, as we turned the creation we were supposed to watch over into dollar bills. Money was a fruit from the tree of knowledge that we were not supposed to eat from. It was one of those unknown horizons that we were exposed to when we decided to ignore the wisdom of 7 generations and ended our lives as hunters and gatherers. It was a poisoned fruit. The third wrong we committed was to begin using money. The fourth wrong, we started burning oil. When mankind lived as hunters and gatherers, our technology and population remained fairly constant. Then, after money was introduced, mankind's numbers and technologies began to rise. Slowly but steadily, the technology and population of mankind on Earth grew, until one day the final technological and population overshoot happened. Mankind discovered oil. When oil, all fossil fuels, was added to money, the technology and population of man went through the roof. The growth was faster than mankind had ever seen, and each generation faced far more dramatically different horizons than the generations before. The new generation in charge when oil was put into power had thus far only experienced the ravages of money. They had not yet experienced the ravages of money powered by oil. They had not yet experienced the Industrial Revolution, nor World Wars I and II, or the nuclear bomb, or the tenfold increase in the human population from 700 million to 7.5 billion. We had already been poisoned by money. We were already living in the blindness. Our hearts had already been hardened. Oil allowed us to make more money than ever before, and that's what drove us. Oil allowed us to feed our addiction to the poison of money. The oil and coal that mankind has extracted from the ground was formed from the microorganisms that made up the primordial ooze where life on earth began. Without our spiritual connection to life and the earth, without the wisdom of 7 generations, and being propelled onward by the insatiable desire to make more money, we did not stop to consider what the effects would be if we exhumed the remains of this ancient life and burned it. Prior to the Industrial Revolution, carbon dioxide in our atmosphere had never rose above 280 parts per million for at least 650,000 years. During this entire 650,000 years, the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere fluctuated, but never increased by more than 30 parts per million in any 1,000-year period. Since 1998, in the last 20 years, in one generation, the concentration has increased by 45 parts per million. As of June 11th, 2018, the amount of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere is 411 parts per million, which is an increase of almost 1.5 times and is the primary cause of global warming. This is a graveyard that mankind did not want to exhume. We have unleashed a beast that has our entire planet in its jaws. The burning of fossil fuels for energy was the fourth time that mankind went wrong.